So the last class went well today then?
It did. I really enjoyed it.
Good.
But I've enjoyed every day this week. In Patriots Path, it's so much more relaxed, and we actually get the explanation. And even though the group size is not significantly different, it feels more intimate in Patriots Path. Like, it feels like you can have those conversations.
Part of it is, like I was telling Andy, making sure that we have a smaller class. So that 10 to 15 person around a conference table is a nice, I think, venue. And then you're not like somebody sitting in the back checking their phones. It's like, no, I can see you. You're at the conference table.
Right.
So it forces everybody to engage. And my favorite thing is, what did you hear? You know, and you were great too. When I asked you, I was like, okay, I'm gonna put you on the spot. What did you hear? And you were great. You did exactly. I mean, she must have done it really well because your response was, this is what she's looking for. And I was like, oh yeah, it's
right. I'm surprised that you were kind of able to put these together in just a couple days. And everybody felt so, I was telling her, like encouraging and supportive. It sounded like you guys had a good group.
Mm-hmm. We did.
And a good relationship started to form even after just like a few days.
Yes. And I think it's because we all came in scared, right? We all came in like, I need to learn something. And everybody else around me wants to learn something too. This is great. This is amazing. I'm not the, bottom of the totem pole. Everybody's kind of on the same level to some degree. And that really mattered.
Yeah. So it helps to have a community of people that are wanting the same things and looking for the same tools and resources.
Absolutely. I mean, that's kind of how we function. When we talk about the veteran community, we're all kind of seeking the same thing, especially when we come to something like Patriots Path, we're all seeking to get better. We don't know necessarily what that means, but we all know we're trying to get better. So how do we make this happen?
Yeah, and Noelle's providing some of the resources. You're willing to put in the effort and the energy and the work.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. It was rewarding to hear someone who was in the class today say, I've been in the corporate world for many, many years, and I still had to come in thinking this is overwhelming. And he was looking across the table at a senior, military person in almost 30 years. And this gentleman said, look, I look at you and you're 30 years in the military and you're confused and scared too. That makes me feel better.
Yes.
Yeah. So I like having people, it's not only people that are just getting out of the military, it's folks that are in career transition regardless of when they served. And the military spouses, it's all about reinventing yourself. And it was encouraging to see him look across the table and go, wow, it's not just me.
Yes, absolutely. And it validates us that are just now transitioning, that it's not as easy as people say that you can just jump into something, right? For somebody who's been in the corporate world to say, hey, I'm still struggling too, it makes you think, hey, yes, I'm in the right place with the right people, learning the right things.
Right.
Yeah. And somebody said the TAP class, when you leave the military, regardless of the branch, they offer these great classes that they're called TAP Transition Assistance Program, Soldier for Life, SFL TAP. And they're great. And they're great jumping off points, I think. But what Patriots Path does is we say, they gave you the tools. We're going to show you how to use those tools. So it's a nice follow-on. It's much more personal and real-world experience. But the other thing is someone said to me, we have to go to TAP. We know we're just going in to check the box.
Oh, it's required?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's required.
Okay.
Which, good on the military. It needs to be. People do need that.
Absolutely.
Exit strategy and that time to process. But on the flip side, she said, but these folks are here because they want to be. And it lends a whole different feel to the course and to how you cover the topics and the engagement, the level of engagement.
Right.
And I thought that was productive.
So can you walk through what all is included in the Patriots Path course?
Well, Patriots Path is it is a path. It's a journey. It's starting at the beginning. What is it that you feel is your best gift? What do you really enjoy doing? And it's a sort of a self-assessment. And we go through that and we use the Berkman, which is a personality and interest assessment. And once you figure out sort of what you're leaning towards, not what you want to do, none of us know what we want to be when we grow up, right? But once you figure out what verbiage is good and suits you and is going to work well in branding yourself and marketing yourself, and I could see myself doing that. And that is what I enjoy doing. Then we talk about resumes. And the resume needs to reflect that person's three-dimensional self and not just well, this is the one thing I want to do, so I'm going to write my resume down this path. So resumes, a lot of branding and marketing. How do you talk about those skills? How do you speak confidently about yourself? Not cocky, but confident.
Right.
And then we talk a lot about the resume and how that works in networking and how you put that out on LinkedIn. We talk about how recruiters use LinkedIn to find candidates, so it allows everybody to reverse engineer their profiles and be really more productive within that space. We talk a lot about, again, how do you network? Where do you network? We talk about recruiters, different types of recruiters. How do you use recruiters? How do recruiters interact with you? And then we talk about, once you get that interview, now what? How do you prepare for the interview? Where do you find the information you need on that organization that you're getting ready to walk into? And so before the interview, during the interview, what are the questions you might get asked? Why are you getting asked those questions? Sometimes that helps just to understand why.
Right.
And then we think about after the interview, what happens when the phone doesn't ring? What if it rings a lot and you get 2 offers? What if you get an offer, but you really want the other one? I mean, a lot of just real world scenarios that we talk through so they can be, expectant and they understand what could happen. And then we talk about, how do you negotiate an offer?
That's good.
Yeah, it's not all about salary, right? What else is there? And we talk about negotiating and the different things you can ask for, your priorities in your life. And then again, what does it look like the first year in the job? What do you need to keep doing to stay relevant and be top of the totem pole when the next promotion is available? And again, the rest of it after that is simply continued community engagement. And we have a lot of events afterwards that are networking events, financial literacy events, etiquette, lots of fun stuff, social stuff.
Right.
And we also have about 120 volunteers in the community, actually throughout the country now,
Nice.
who can sit down and do a one-on-one mock interview or resume review with our students. So there's just this continual touch, and I'm still in touch with students that went through the program 6 years ago.
Oh, that's neat.
So we try and stay connected no matter what.
Yeah. Man, that's so cool. I mean, that's a lot of stuff that anybody could use,
Absolutely.
Like I said, when I was in the class yesterday, even just being there 2 hours, and I've spent, several years in the corporate world, I picked up things that I can go back and use, So what was it that made you want to provide this service to veterans, like back when you started this program?
I have a passion for the military. My dad was in the service, and he and I were very close. So there's a part of me that just wants to be around people that had the same values and had the same energy about them and the same missions and goals. And so I've always had that connection. And so I had it in my heart, and I was working as an executive recruiter. So I was doing, recruiting senior talent globally. And I was getting these calls from military folks that were interested in the jobs that I had. And they were senior folks. They were executive level. And they were saying, I'm getting out of the military. And I said, what do you want to do? Well, I don't know. Or I'll do anything. And my thought process went to, I gotta explain it to these folks that that's not how the answer goes. You got to be more prepared. And I really need to hear your passion come out when you talk about this stuff.
Right.
And they didn't realize they were using buzzwords. They had picked it up, in TAP class. And so that really prompted me to step back and say, there is a path here. There is a journey. There is an A, B, C, D, E kind of process. How do I bring that to the folks that need it? And that's really what got us started down this road and built the curriculum. And the curriculum has changed a little bit, but not all that much. I think because it's coming from an experienced recruiter. It's not coming from, here's what the slides say.
Right.
It's sort of practical, real world stuff.
Right. Now, Patricia, how many years did you serve?
21 years.
21 years.
21
Wow.
years, yes.
You look, you're 30. I can't believe you served
Thank you.
21 years.
That's because I came in when I was 10.
Of course. Well, thank you for dedicating that many years to the Air Force, right?
Oh, thank you.
I was excited to hear kind of your passion for the future, and look forward to seeing how you're going to serve the community and make an impact. So when you were thinking about making that transition, what were some of the obstacles? What were some of the things that were going through your mind as you were looking at getting out and moving to the private sector?
Yeah, so one of the things that as service members, we get taught a lot of different skills, right? You can do almost anything. And, to Noel's point, when we went through TAP, that's what they focused on. Hey, you can do anything. So just pick something that you can do and go for it. And that didn't really, it didn't really make sense for me. Because just because I can do a job doesn't mean I want to do the job for the rest of my life. And I'm not looking for a job, I'm looking for a career.
Right.
So I really wanted to make sure that I was transitioning from the Air Force in time for me to have another career and kind of pursue my passions and continue to serve, but just serve in a different way. So that's really what my path was, to kind of do that. And then to find out about Patriots Path, and it's a behind the scenes look, right? This is from a corporate recruiter, somebody who's been doing this, not somebody who's been writing resumes, but somebody who's been receiving them. And she understands this from a different perspective. And oh, by the way, she's not a veteran. So if I throw a veteran term at her, she can go, hold on. Nobody understands that but you.
Right.
Right. So that really was important to me.
Yeah. So how did you learn about some of the things that veterans are going through and that language through the experience with your father?
A little bit, but also just being around folks and picking it up. It took a while to figure out what MOS was and what they were saying when they said, oh, it's USASOC. And I was like, I got this. So,
right.
And two, being on post more often, being at Camp Lejeune, being at Fort Bragg, it helps. But I think they've taught me as much as I've taught them. It's been a learning process.
Right.
But,
Right.
Our instructors are all learning. All of us are, in executive search or career counseling. So I think we all kind of lean in a little bit and listen more so we can bring that with us the next time.
Right. Well, that takes a unique skill set to be able to take the incredible experience that you have and put that into terms that normal people, civilians know.
Right.
Because, like you said, I think if you were to read through your experience and maybe with the lingo, I probably wouldn't have any clue what it is. But you can kind of help transition and articulate differently so that her skill set and your passions come out for what you want to do.
Yes, and I think the Berkman actually was a very surprising thing for me because I knew, there was not a job that I could jump into that I would be afraid of. But taking that assessment and actually not being originally happy with the results really opened my eyes because I come from a weather forecast background. To me, that's all a bunch of numbers. That's what I thought my happy place was. And then to find out that it was supposed to be artistic, and I'm like, I'm not picking up a paintbrush. That's just not, right. I'm a veteran. I'm hardcore, right? So, but having Noel actually shape that in a different way, that it is more about being visual. When you talk about weather forecasting, it's numbers, but it's numbers that create images, right? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how I process, how I work. So finding that was really important. And again, it's about finding that career, right? I can do anything, but what do you want to do?
Right. Yeah, I think that's missed a lot. People, not just veterans, but people graduate from college or take a career shift just because it's the thing to do or it's expected rather than looking at what do they really want to do and how are they living out their passion.
Absolutely.
So I think that's amazing that you're able to get down to that, and the personality assessment really helped with that.
Yes, it absolutely did, because I would never have said, "Oh, I'm an artistic person." Right? That's just not an adjective I was used for myself. But seeing that, and one of the things that was actually lowest on mine was scientific, and I said, Noelle, I was a weather forecaster. And she said, yes, but you don't want to do that anymore. So it makes sense that it would be one of your lower categories. And I think coming from a veteran mindset of, no, this is what I've been doing, so I'm going to continue to do that. We've never really thought about, okay, what do I want to do? What do I need to do? What really drives me? So that was very, very helpful for me.
Yeah. Day one, we sit back and look at what have been your favorite jobs and why. And then you say, don't tell me about the job. Don't tell me what you did. Just tell me why you liked it or tell me why you were good at it. And all of a sudden, you start connecting dots and going, you do know that you keep saying you like this in this job and you liked this in this job. Those are the same thing. And that tells me a little bit about what you need to be doing in your future job. And the light bulbs go off and, and not everybody sees it day one, but I'd like to think that by the final day together, we're all like,
right.
We're pointing at each other because everybody becomes friends and we're all pointing at each other like, you did say that twice. You do know that, right?
Yeah, I noticed that in the class yesterday.
Yeah, and everybody's smiling and patting them on the back. And I think it's a journey for all of us. How do you get into something completely different but remain true to yourself and true to what made you good at those things? How do you shift gears and reinvent yourself, but stay true to your talent and to your heart and to your passion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think coming out of the military, sometimes like it wasn't my passion, it was my mission.
Right. Mm.
Yes. It definitely the way we kind of looked at it, it was our mission. This
And
is what your mission is.
You were passionate about the mission. I get that.
Mm.
You had to be but this is kind of a new mission. That transition is a new mission, and you become the mission. How are you going to make yourself successful in a positive way, in a way that you're going to be happy? So yeah, you have to become passionate about yourself,
right,
and your needs.
And so when you're serving in the military, is there much time or opportunity to think about those kind of things? Like, what do I want to do, or is the structure pretty rigid so you kind of know your path?
So, for example, for me, once I came into the weather career field, that was what I was going to do. There are opportunities to kind of venture into other career fields, into other jobs, but for the most part, you have a path. I knew that I was going to start by just watching the weather. Then I would start, forecasting the weather, and then I would start telling people about the weather, and suddenly I became the weather expert. So there was a very defined path, and whether you loved it or not, and I did enjoy weather, that was your thing, and that was what you were going to do,
Okay.
and until you decided not to do it anymore. So it was very rigid to some degree.
So then, when you came out of it, is that when you started thinking about what you really wanted to do?
Absolutely not. In fact, once I decided to transition, it was more of, to some degree, I was looking for somebody to go, hey, you need to do this and do it. And I would be like, perfect. I'm in a job. Let's get this, done.
Yes, sir.
Right. Exactly. Unfortunately, there's nobody that does that, right? You transition out and there's nobody standing, outside the gate going, your next job is going to be this. So you really do have to start being very introspective and figuring that out. And you have to find organizations that are going to help you do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the value that the Patriots Path brings. It definitely brought it for me. It allowed me to be introspective, but almost in a very linear military way. Like she understands the military mind enough to go, okay, we're going to talk about it this way. So that really helped.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of value, it seems like, in gearing it towards people who have served versus an organization that maybe just kind of serves a wide variety of people. It sounds like you have a specific method that helps flush out things that maybe you weren't able to think about when you were in the military career.
Absolutely.
Okay.
For the resume itself, I think, in TAP, in the Transition Assistance Program, they give you a resume and they go, okay, write all the stuff that you've done and write your jobs this way. But they don't talk about, okay, you have to create this 3D version of yourself, because when somebody grabs your resume, they want to see a 3D version of you. All these skills that you have may be great, but they have to tell a story. And you have to highlight, who you are, not necessarily what you are. So I think that's a difference.
Okay. Wow. And so when you left, did you get your degree or did you go back to school?
So I actually got my degree while I was still serving.
Oh, wow.
The last 5 years, I knew that, I wanted to kind of finish the next 5 years and be done and move on to something else. So I made sure that I did take some things with me. And that one of the things was a degree. I didn't want to have to go back to school while I was transitioning and trying to find a job at the same time.
Right. That's a lot of work.
It is.
That must have been tough.
So they say the average, I think, for a military service member to actually get the degree is like 12 years. Yeah, so,
wow.
You get it. It takes some time.
Right.
And it does mean you're going to have to work a little harder, but it was important to me to get it.
Wow. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's exciting. I bet that feels good to be behind you.
It does. Once I got that diploma, I was like, okay,
right.
Let's breathe a little bit and then decide if I want to do more.
Right. And you recently got a certification?
I did. I recently got my project management certification, and it was interesting because I didn't really think about project management as kind of a career, but I had done projects my entire military life. So getting that certification and then looking at what that could do for me was great, especially since it's something I enjoy doing.
Right.
Projects are fabulous. I love them.
Right. So were you able to apply a lot of the like hours? Because you have to get like a certain number of hours in
Yes.
project management or something.
Yes. So I actually went through a course for project management, and they actually outlined exactly how many hours you needed to get. And I think it was like 4,800 hours. And I thought, there's no way I've got 4,800 hours of projects, right? But then I started looking back and, oh, wait, this is a project that I did. And this is a project that I did. And this is a project that I did. And yeah, it started adding up. And I was like, oh, I'm only 3 years in and I've got 5,000 hours. I think I qualify. I guess I'll do this.
Right. That's cool. Oh, congrats. That's a big deal.
Thank you.
And so what is your ideal next step? What's your dream job?
If I can take a company and create projects and complete projects for them that makes them better, faster, cheaper, man, that'll be my happy place.
Yeah.
I want people to look at me and go, hey, you want things done better, faster, cheaper, you need to contact Patricia. Hey, you got a project coming up? Patricia's your girl.
Yeah.
Right? That's really what I want.
That's cool. No, that's a cool vision. So how has that changed from 5 days ago before you started the Patriots Path workshops?
I think my first 10-second pitch, I talked about data analysis and risk management because it's stuff I've done in the past. And I was like, well, those are buzzwords. People are getting paid doing that stuff, so
Right.
I'll just run with that. And then, I think it was being very introspective and realizing, hey, while that's stuff I can do, it's not necessarily stuff I want to do. It's not something that I really am passionate about. It's not something that, I'll use the terms, your eyes light up. My eyes were not lit at all. I'm pretty sure I kind of gave the dead stare when I would say data analytics and risk management. So rephrasing that, looking at, what I really, really enjoyed about previous jobs that I've done. What was a common thing? That's when I realized that, what I really love about every one of my jobs was that I ran projects and things worked better. When I left, things worked better.
Mm-hmm.
So I finally got to a 30-second that worked, that I was passionate about, and it ended up being, project management. Go figure.
Yeah, that's neat.
Yeah, the 10 second is the hardest.
10-second is the hardest.
10 seconds, one sentence.
Yes.
That's tough.
Yeah.
I don't know
So
if
what
I
do
could
you
do that. Yeah.
It's tricky, but
Y'all don't like me day one. I know that.
no.
Yeah. We're going to go down this path. Y'all like,
When everybody went around yesterday, everybody seemed really confident in what they had to say, and just after a few days.
I think we practice it all. I know for me, I would jump in the shower and practice it, jump out of the shower and practice it.
Right.
While I'm driving, I'm practicing it over and over and over in my head, because I know first thing when we sit down, we're doing either a 10 or a 30 second, and you want to be ready.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So is it difficult to translate the work you did and the skill set you have into a way that people are going to understand, or into your dream job? That takes a lot of thinking, right?
It does. So, like I said, in the military, I was a weather forecaster. I say weather forecaster, people immediately go, oh, you must be wanting to be on TV, right? Because that's what they kind of see, but there's so much more to it. So having to figure out, how do I translate that in a way that, a corporate recruiter is going to understand, that somebody's going to look at me and go, okay, these are the skills you have because you said you're this, is a little difficult. Right. And you probably have seen that with a lot of your veterans.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at folks that like you said, the common thought is, oh, you want to be on TV. And even those folks, you look at those meteorologists and they're on TV. How many, maybe half an hour a day total, if you add all the 1 and 2 and 3 minute slots they have? Mm-hmm. What are they doing the rest of the day? Oh, they're crunching numbers.
Exactly.
Right? And that's the part that you did, and that's the part that you bring to bring to the table. So it's looking at all the other stuff. And when you talk to folks in the military, you can say, what did you do in the military? And they can say, oh, well, I was, supply chain or logistics, or I was HR. But they did 4 or 5 things. There was always that secondary and all the other things that you need to do besides your primary goal, your primary MOS or rate.
Absolutely.
And so then you got to start thinking, well, did some of those resonate more with me, or how do I answer that question? What did you do? Because I did so much.
Yes. There is a lot to draw from, and it can be overwhelming to see all these things. Oh, I've done this. Because on top of being a weather forecaster, I was also HR, which was a first sergeant duty. That meant I dealt with people and making sure that their problems were fixed, and we were following the regulations. And on top of that, I was also teaching professional development. So how do I incorporate that? So there's a lot of additional duties that we do. And it becomes very overwhelming to say, okay, how do I condense my career into 2 pages that are relevant?
Right. Yeah, that's hard. That's hard for a lot of people.
Right.
Have you, or why do you think that people making that transition out struggle to find something that they're excited about? Like, what is the primary obstacle that's stopping them from doing that?
I think it's for many veterans, and you have some that serve 4 years, 6 years, 10 years. They're fed information a lot of times. So when you transition, you're not necessarily fed the information. It really takes a lot to look for the information and find out who the allies are who are going to help you take those next steps. So that's a challenge. You really are in research mode. And oh, by the way, you still have a finite time frame that you have to get a position because you have to bring in money. So there's that pressure. So there's just a lot going on in a very short period of time if you're not willing to put in a lot of work to make sure you find the right people to help you.
Right.
I think in the military, you have a mission. And no matter what branch you serve in or what you're doing, whether you're on the ground, you're at sea, you're in the air, your mission is the same. You can see somebody in uniform and you know that at the end of the day, you guys have that in common.
Yes.
When folks leave the military, they walk out and every company out there has a different mission.
Yes.
So then it's not only finding how do I contribute to the mission, but which mission do I contribute to? Where do I want to land? Who do I want to be with every day? And so a lot of veterans will get out and they'll grab a job and sometimes be underemployed because they're so, I got to get the job. I got to put food on the table. And they grab that job. And then 6 months in, they're thinking, that's not the right mission for me. I don't feel comfortable with this team and where we're headed. So then they shift gears to another job. 6 months later, they shift gears to a third job. And at that point, they're understanding what we call corporate culture. And, which is the mission. But I think that's one of the other things that's tough. It's the loss of the core group. You kind of out in an individualistic society after having a team around you. You're not quite sure how your skills translate.
Yes.
And even if you can translate them, you don't know what you should be applying for because the job titles don't mean the same.
Right.
It's like, well, I was an 88 Mike. Now what? Right? So yeah, I think that's the other thing that keeps them from just sort of feeling pulled into something that they love. School is oftentimes the thing that, you get out of the military, you go to school, and then you have that sort of, it's a little easier transition, I think, because then you have time to acclimate and to explore things that you want to do without as much pressure.
Right. Do you feel like a lot of people stay in the military longer than they would prefer because they don't almost fear the unknown? They don't know how to make that step?
I think it really depends on, from veteran to veteran. For some of them, it makes more sense to continue to serve and they want to continue to serve as long as they possibly can. For some of them, family obligations may mean that I can't do another move because my family needs me to stay here. So that means I need to transition. So it really depends veteran to veteran. I know it is a fear, even when you choose to transition. It is not, an easy process, and it is a very scary process.
Yeah, I bet.
But there's a lot of different factors for different people.
Yeah, and I imagine the culture is very different between like a military career and a corporate career.
Yes.
What are some of those? I've never served, but what are some of those big differences that are a big adjustment for people?
So I think as veterans, I know when I get around veterans, we're very direct, right? It's everything's very direct. And we always joke that whenever we get around veterans, you can use a knife hand more often and nobody feels threatened. But it's, there's a directness in the veteran community that you don't see on the outside. The other thing is that the language is different. Things that we're used to saying, even dates. I remember I was at the speed networking event and, I told somebody, hey, I transitioned on 31 August. And he's like, no, nobody in corporate America says 31 August. Everybody says either end of August or August 31st. But it's little things that'll trip you up. The language is definitely a big one.
Like time too, probably.
Yes, right. 2:00 for me is 1400. But I can't tell, if I'm meeting somebody for coffee that is a civilian, I can't be like, 15:30, meet me at Starbucks. They're like, I don't know, that's not a real time.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And in corporate America, the networking and like the social side is kind of a big part of it.
Yes.
Like previous jobs I've had, I mean, people, go out afterwards or go out to lunch together or in the middle of the day, just meet up and socialize. Is that present in the military or is it more rigid?
But it's in a different way. For example, I would network with people not because they were going to help me get into a different position, but because they could help me with, maybe I would network with somebody who does finances. If my pay was late, I could go right to that person and go, hey, can you check on this for me? Right? Because promotions were set a certain way, it wasn't like you could buddy up with somebody and they would do something special. I know when we were deployed, the first person you networked with was the people that worked the dining facility. Because if there was something great, they were going to get you hooked up, right? So we
Right.
networked, but for a little different purpose.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, because when you network, typically in corporate world, it's, we can help each other someday or you never know when you're going to cross paths
Right.
with somebody. But it's typically to help with, career growth and promotion, where in the case of the military, it's pretty set, right? Those promotions.
Right. Those promotions are pretty set. Nobody can really help you get promoted faster because you know them. It's
Right.
very much performance based. So networking, yes, you definitely networked with people, but for a completely different purpose. So that's another challenge because we're used to networking, but it's not, hey, I need to network in order for them to help me, do this, get promoted.
Yeah. So how has Patriots Path helped you with that?
So one of the things that I had to learn from networking is that when I would network with somebody in the military, you would see them and you would say hi, and then you would talk to them some more. From Patriots Path, we understood that, not only do you network, you connect with somebody, but exchange business cards. Make sure that you follow up with them immediately, so that they can remember you, those 7 touches, and then email them and then call them and realize that you have to be mutually beneficial to each other. So that's completely different than what I'm used to. If I would have told one of my military friends, hey, connect with me on LinkedIn and then I'll send you an email, they go, why? Right? I can't do anything for you, but maybe get you an extra hot dog at the chow hall.
Right. Yeah, it's a different world. And so you do the workshops and in those you kind of walk through some of the things we've been talking about, like networking, resume building, handing out business cards, how to kind of present yourself. And then is there like a mentorship or a coaching aspect following the workshops?
Yeah, we have about 120 volunteers, most of whom are here in the Charlotte region, but we've got them all over the country, really. Typically talent acquisition folks that have worked in human resources, or they're career coaches or executives. And not all of them are military. We have some veterans in that crowd, of course, but those folks stand at the ready to do some one-on-one, face-to-face work with our veterans on their resumes and mock interview opportunities, peer-to-peer mentoring, job shadowing. So we go over the basics in class, and we'll make sure that they have a resume they feel good about. But then I'm like, all right, now I'm going to pair you with somebody that can look at it with a fresh set of eyes. And if we can pair folks up, if they're interested in logistics and I can pair them with somebody at Ingersoll Rand who's a volunteer of ours, then that's a bonus, right? If someone's interested in human resources and I'm like, I know somebody in human resources you need to talk to, and then I can make that connection because it's one of our volunteers, that's what we do. We're not going to put somebody in a job. We're not going to say, hey, this job is open, you should apply. I'll send the job out and I might say, hey, if you're interested in finance and you've got a background in education, look at TIAA, right? It's just connecting the dots for people sometimes and then saying, here, you go do it, but I'm gonna put you on the right path, but then it's up to them. So a lot of folks are like, well, are you going to get me a job? And it doesn't work that way, but I will help you as much as I can. So the mentoring piece not only comes from our instructors, all of us are available for years or however long they want to, reach out and ask us a question. I still get on the phone with folks when they're like, I got to negotiate this salary. What do I do? Those are my favorite phone calls, of course. Because I'm always like, no, ask for more.
Right.
And then hit the donate button on our website. But yeah, so the opportunity to pair them with mentors and coaches is just ongoing, regardless of how long they've been out of our program. I mean, we're family.
That's great. So it doesn't sound like there's like a beginning and end, a hard stop to the program. You're just a resource to people permanently.
I'd like to think so. Yeah.
I'm hoping so, because I'm going to continue to bug you. So I'm hoping there's no end.
We will be there for you.
And have you found that people who have been through your program have built network with each other?
Yes, I do. And that's one of my favorite things. I have to say, the fact that I have not served in the military means that there are some conversations I can't have with them. And sometimes we take a break during class and they split off and they have their little conversations one-on-one. And I have to say that's one of the most wonderful things about the smaller class size, that format, because I hear the conversations happening, veteran to veteran, like, yeah, I'm really struggling with this. And somebody goes, you know what, I did too. Here's a resource. Or, I'm not getting this. Well, let me help you. So they form those bonds and those friendships. And I think Patricia and one of our other students both decided, hey, we're going to co-teach or co-sponsor a women's veterans group.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, they didn't know each other before they came into the class.
Yes.
Right.
So I think they do. And that makes me happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's part of
awesome.
what you're missing. I think when you guys, as military folks, get out of the military, you're missing that very personal understanding of one another, and you're missing your tribe. You're missing your wingman and your battle buddy. And I hope that in these smaller classes, they're able to find that again.
Right.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely. Because even though we transition, we are still, we're still trying to be part of corporate America, but that doesn't mean we want to lose what we had in the service, that brotherhood that we had. And yes, the people that I was in class with this week, amazing. Now I have 6, not only connection, but friends that I can always go to and have had a similar experience to what I have had and understand that the same way I do.
Right. So somebody like me, a civilian who hasn't served, who really doesn't know what it's like, what can people like me do to help or to make that transition better?
I think it's really about understanding that anybody can be an ally to veterans, right? We are in learning phase. When we're in transition, we're in learning phase. Volunteer for organizations like Patriots Path. Hey, help donate, right? Because the more that we're able to continue to fund these organizations, the more veterans can get help. And, the more veterans that get help, the more they've helped other people. And that's really, really important. I always say that, being a veteran is great, but I can't really do what I do without the support of my community. And 97% of America has never served. Right. So that means that I have, 97% of America can be allies to me, and I appreciate that 100%, but it's those organizations, volunteering for them, helping us do things like, resumes and mock interviews and things like that. But definitely helping those organizations that are helping us would really, really help.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. So you're in the process of this transition. And just based on what I've heard from you, I know you're going to be extremely successful.
Thank you.
But
Fingers crossed.
what is something that you wish you had known coming out, going into that transition process? Like if somebody else was you, a year ago when you were looking at transitioning out, what do you wish they would know?
I wish I would have known that just doing TAP would not be enough. I think what a lot of the veterans around me at the time were saying is make sure you just go to TAP. You'll get a lot of great information and then go out into the world. I wish I would have known that there were other organizations that I could, be a part of, because there are. I wish I would have known that I could get this information before I actually, hung up the uniform for the last time. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a wealth of information out there that we as veterans are not getting that I wish I would have known a year, 2 years ago.
Okay.
And definitely begin your transition early. A year is not enough.
Wow.
You're talking about 2 years is when you really need to know not only what you can do, but, what you need to do, what's your passion going to be, and how do you get there, and finding courses that are going to help you reach those goals.
That must be tough, though, because 2 years from getting out, sometimes you don't even know.
Right. Sometimes you don't know.
2 years. And the other thing is you're still so focused on the mission at hand. It's hard to let that go and say, hey, I'm going to go take off the uniform, put a suit on and go to this class.
It is.
4 hours a day for a week. It is tough.
It is. It would be great if we could say, hey, I'm going to transition out in 2 years. So if you could lighten my workload, that'd be great.
We're not on board with that.
Right. I only want to be military part-time. So if you could do that, I would appreciate it. But yeah, the earlier you start, the better. Sometimes you don't know. So as soon as you've made that decision, as soon as you know, find those organizations that are going to help.
And Patriots Path actually works with people that are still serving, right?
Absolutely. We work with folks that are currently serving, even if they're a year from separation, that's fine. And we work with folks who have just gotten out. We work with folks who have been out for a while and maybe worked in the corporate world for a while, but they find themselves in transition again. And we work with military spouses because they've had to uproot every deployment as well. They've had to uproot every couple of years and move. And they're struggling to pinpoint what is it that I do well because I've had to move so much that employers think I'm going to move again. They don't understand. So I think military spouses are just as much of the military component and they've served just as much and they need to be supported just as much. So those are across that's our bandwidth.
That's really cool. So have you had spouses come in together?
Actually, I have. Yeah. Yes. It's very cool. It's very cool. I have to separate them after a while.
Right. Yeah, that's neat.
Yeah, it is. It's fun, though.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
We have a lot of dual military families, too, where the husband will come take the class and go home, and the wife's like, I've been trying to tell you that stuff for a while now. And he goes, okay, smarty, you go take the class. And then the wife comes in and takes the class.
Right.
And no, it's fantastic. That's a lot of fun.
That's really neat. And each workshop or class, I think you had mentioned earlier, but 15, 20 people?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that's I feel like that's a small enough group where people still feel like they can be open and honest with each other.
And they get to know each other. They can give each other feedback. Because sometimes we can't hear ourselves as well as someone else can mirror it back to us.
Exactly.
Right.
So having a small crowd under 20 and typically we're around a conference table, right? It's, I think 10 to 15 is our sweet spot. It sounds like just a few people, but there's so much to cover and there's so much interaction that it gets tougher to do when you get up to the 20. But we take up to 20.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the class I visited yesterday, your class was like 8 people.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And there's a lot of conversation. There was never a dull moment. People are always talking and offering feedback and encouraging each other, which I think is awesome. So where do you need volunteers or support the most at this point?
I think getting the word out. I would say if there's anybody out there that says, I've got a friend that's struggling with this transition, just getting the word out, letting them know there are so many resources here. And so many of the resources in Charlotte, we pool together. We really collaborate a lot. And so if you can connect with one, we can generally point you to another as well. So I would say that the other thing is always just support financially, allowing us to pay for those personality assessments, to get our workbooks and to continue improving the curriculum and pay for our staff. So those are things that really, keeping the lights on is part of it as a 501c3.
It is.
But yeah,
funding is always a need.
Exactly. Yeah. But again, I think what I need is more about what they need. I think it's more about finding people that want to stop and have the conversation. And they don't just say, thank you for your service. They say, thank you for all you've done and all the sacrifice you've made. Now that you're transitioning out, tell me what you need.
Yes.
What are you thinking? How are you feeling? What's going on? How can I help? That's the conversation, not just, thank you for your service and leave it at that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because I've heard people say different things on that. When thanking you for what you've done and everything you've sacrificed, do you have a preference or what are your thoughts on that?
So, for me, it's always kind of uncomfortable for people to thank me for my service because to me, it's just part of what you do. I don't do it for accolades. And I think most veterans would tell you the same thing. It's uncomfortable to be thanked for our service because we do it because we have a passion for it to some degree, right? You want to serve your country. We don't do it for, big awards or parades or anything like that. That's what we do it for. I appreciate more when people actually do ask me more about my service hey, can you tell me, what was your service like? Because you see it on TV. I promise you I was no G.I. Jane.
Right.
Right? But, talk to me about, my service. And I do. I'm happy to sit down with anybody and have coffee and just talk about my experiences. Because I did have some great experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you have those conversations, the more the civilians pick up on it and understand it.
Right.
I think one of the greatest sidebar effects that the class has had is all those 120 volunteers who the ones that didn't serve, they stepped up and said, I'll have a conversation with a veteran. And they got better at hiring. So all of our talent acquisition folks that are so gracious with their time to volunteer with our veterans, they go back to their office and now they understand what infantry means because they were able to ask somebody in a casual conversation. If somebody says, oh, well, that was, when I PCS'd, and somebody, you can say, wait a minute, what does that mean again? And you can't do that when you're in talent acquisition and you're having a formal interview. You just have to keep scribbling and keep writing, and you got an hour, and then you kick them to the next person to interview. But in those moments, I think our community has become stronger and better able at not just hiring veterans, but hiring them for the right jobs. So it's been a secondary effect of that portion of the program.
Yeah, it takes some training and teaching on both sides, right?
Yes.
Because, you coming on, the corporate world's very different, but somebody who's been in corporate, recruiting, executive recruiting for a while, they have no idea. So, opening up the door for those conversations is really helpful to both parties, I think.
So that's what's needed the most, I think, is just for people to stop for a minute and not be afraid to ask a veteran, tell me more about what you did. Where did you serve? Just being thoughtful and listening and being supportive. There aren't that many veterans out there. I mean, if you look, like you said, 97% haven't served or 98% haven't served. So it's not that tough to stop and have that conversation. It's not like you're going to have it every day.
Right.
So take a few extra minutes and look somebody in the eye and just settle in for a minute. It's important.
Well, no, that's good to hear that most people are open to it. I'm sure everybody's different, but that's always been my hesitation is, well, maybe they don't want to talk about it, or, maybe they're in their new career now and I don't know, they don't want to identify. I don't know.
No, I think, it's being a veteran is not just a job that we did, right? It's not, you didn't put on the uniform from 9 to 5. It was life for us. And I would say the majority of us are very proud of what we did. And we won't always tell you the scary stories, but there's always some really great stuff, that we are willing to talk about.
Right.
So. Okay.
That's good to know. And are most of the companies that you work with pretty open or excited about bringing veterans on board?
Absolutely. They really are. I think that's been the other thing that our program has fostered is we've been able to say, hey, we're going to have our courses out in corporate boardrooms. So we'll partner with an organization and say, can we borrow a boardroom for the week from 9 to 1 each day? And then we'll bring the veterans in to your space, and they are thrilled. The folks that work for those organizations will come out and we'll have a guest speaker each day, somebody from marketing one day, somebody from HR another day. They have the ability as sponsors of the course to come in and interact. So a lot of folks say they want to hire military and they want to hire veterans. But it's the ones that come in and say, I want to understand veterans and we'd like to host you and make a difference and sponsor your course and make it possible. Oh, and by the way, come into our space so we can interact and we can sit with you in class. That changes the game completely. It is. It's amazing. So everybody's been very, very supportive in Charlotte and in Raleigh and, Fayetteville, all over.
That's great. So where can people go if they want to get involved?
Our website is patriots-path.org.
Okay.
So absolutely. Go to the website and follow us on Facebook, all that good stuff. Yeah.
Well, thank you both. Patricia, thank you. I'm really excited to hear how you're going to impact the Charlotte community. It's going to be awesome.
Thank you so much for that.
I think the only other thing that we didn't talk about was, like I was talking about the networking afterwards. We tend to have these speed networking events where the veterans get to give their sort of quick pitch to a corporate person, and the corporate person gives them some feedback. And then after about 3 minutes, the veterans stand up, move over, sit down, and do the same thing with the next corporate person. And so after about, 20 iterations of that, you get to the end, you're like, I think I got my pitch nailed.
Right. Yeah.
But in the process, you've met all these great people. So I always tell folks, don't bring your resume, bring your business card.
Okay. Yeah.
Because this is going to be about real networking in action. It's not a job fair.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. There is like a huge benefit in just rehearsing and just like practicing. And there's no better way to practice other than just saying it over and over again. Like you said, like in your house, you're just over and over again. And then when you get in front of people too, I think being able to like give your pitch, and then you notice like, okay, well, this person like asked me this question, or this person like didn't seem to get what I was saying here. So I need to tweak this word. Like,
Yes.
just takes practice.
Yeah, it's
It
like I keep
does.
getting asked the same question. So maybe I should just answer that question in my pitch, right?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that worked. But we love the corporate folks that come out to be those corporate volunteers.
Yeah.
A lot of times, again, out of talent acquisition, out of HR. But for those events, it's just, are you really good at networking? Do you feel comfortable giving that kind of advice back? So those events have been really successful. And I would encourage folks, if they don't have time to dedicate as a volunteer, come out to those events at least.
Okay.
And we do them twice a year, I think. Here in Charlotte, we'll do one at Bragg fairly soon.
Okay. And how many people do you typically have at those events?
We try and keep even numbers. So if we have 20 veterans, we try and keep, have 20 employers or 20 corporate folks.
Right.
So I think a nice number is about 20 of each.
Mm-hmm.
And that way you kind of almost get to everybody. We try and break afterwards for a little bit of a reception so they can
Yeah, that's fun.
breathe and
Yeah.
actually go back to that person they were
Right,
talking
and
to and
connect
go,
with
okay, so we were having a great conversation and I had to get up and move.
Right.
So
Yeah, that's a good way to practice shortening it down to a
Yes.
few seconds.
true.
What do you think about those events like network after work or those like networking happy hours? I mean, do you think those are helpful for people?
Yeah, I
It
do.
kinda
I think
depends.
especially if you're practicing. I think you had a great point today, though, and you were saying you could go to all the veterans events. You could go to the veteran networking and the veteran job fair and the veteran this and the
Right.
veteran that. But at some point,
You have to step out.
you don't want to go to the veteran thing. You want to go to
Yeah.
the corporate thing. And so, yeah, I mean, those of us out there in the business world might say, gosh, networking after hours is not, unless I have something that I'm really trying to communicate to that particular group of people, it's not always helpful. Now, my personal opinion is you get up, you dress up, you show up, something good will happen,
Right. Right.
And so I try and encourage them to do that too, because as veterans, they just need to get out of the veteran space every once in a while and practice.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, to me, it's having the non-veteran perspective has been extremely valuable because veterans understand veterans, right? And sometimes things that we do and think the way we think just makes sense to the other person.
Right.
But civilians don't necessarily think on the same level or kind of a different way. So going to the networking events, I mean, it just makes sense. As long as you're not always going to the veteran events, because you're always going to get the same thing from the veteran events and you're kind of going to get the same people.
They're great because
Right.
people get you and you can have a different conversation.
Right.
As long as you got to, kind of spread out and do a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And folks are a little nervous to do that. So I think it's,
Yeah.
we really encourage them to branch out, kind of throw them into
It's
the fire a little
scary.
bit.
I mean, you've never, because you don't know how people are going to perceive you as a veteran. You go up to somebody and you go, hey, I'm a veteran. And they're like, oh, no,
Mhm.
where's your gun? And, what's going to happen next? So it can be a little intimidating for us because we don't want to make others uncomfortable. But at the same time, I think learning how to cohabitate to some
Mhm.
degree, right,
Right.
is important because you can't
Right.
stay in the veteran community forever. At some point, you're going to have to step out of it.
And networking is listening and building relationships. So
Mhm.
Right.
got to do it
Yeah.
sometime.
And it is amazing how you can go to a networking event with one objective, but you might meet somebody and they can, connect you with somebody else, or maybe down the road, like a year down the road, like, hey, we met at this networking event. It may not always be immediate results. Like this next day, I'm going to get an interview. But like I was at a networking event and I met a guy, and we started talking about nonprofits, and he worked with a nonprofit that allowed my nonprofit to use their space. like that's not why we were at the networking event, but
Right.
like it just came out of our relationship, and now I like do some stuff for his nonprofit and vice versa. So
Yeah, that's what
It's
I mean
cool.
about just dress up, show up, get up, go, and something will come from it. Something
Yeah.
good. You'll bump into somebody that you went to school with, or you'll bump into somebody that has it's like, I know a good painter, you know?
Right.
It's just talk, just relate and listen,
Yeah.
and don't feel like you have to hand out all your business cards. And I think that's the mission to network, is to meet people and give your pitch and hand out the business card. And I just keep trying to, squash that theory and say, just listen.
right.
Just be with people and continue that. And that's really what networking is, right?
Yeah, building relationships.
Right. And
I
that's
think-
why I push you out of your comfort zone
Right.
sometimes.
Yeah, I think you get more out of those events if you go to it not expecting really to get anything in return. Just go there to meet people.
Mhm.
Yeah, Charlotte has, a diverse community, and it's a lot of cool people at those events.
There
Yeah.
definitely are.
So then, what's next for you? Are you now kind of in that networking phase, job searching phase?
So I've been networking. Now I need to make sure that I'm networking more effectively.
Okay.
And yeah, job search. I say job search, more career search, right? I do have the
Right.
flexibility to really focus on what I want to do. I don't necessarily have to jump into any job. So having that flexibility is really, really great for me, at least for a while, and then finding the career that is next for me.
Yeah.
And like you said earlier, finding who you want to do it with.
Right, and who I want to do
Yeah.
it with.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. You should be picky. That if you're looking for a career, then it's worth the time to
Absolutely.
But when you're unemployed, it's scary
No,
to
I
say,
know.
I'm going to
I
be
know.
picky. I'm going to wait it out. And then
Yeah.
you're thinking, I got to get a job. So, yeah.
Because you
There's a
get
lot of
comfortable.
pressure.
You
Yeah.
get comfortable, waking up at 10 o'clock in the morning because, hey, I don't have a job, and I get picky, right?
Yeah.
But eventually you will have to get up at 6 and, do the commute and do all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever find that people who have left the military ever almost lose their sense of purpose or mission? Like you said, I've talked to a couple of people, and after they left, they kind of felt lost. They didn't know what to do.
So that's actually something that we do talk about in the veteran community a lot. And mostly when we talk about losing your sense of purpose is, you do just kind of find a job for whatever company, and because you don't have that bigger purpose of, hey, I'm serving my country, you do feel a little lost. And I think that's one of the reasons they do job hop. I'm still looking for that purpose. And part of that is also because if you don't know what you want, what you truly want, it's hard to feel fulfilled. So it is a concern, It's something that I know I've talked to a lot of veterans about, finding that sense of purpose.
Yeah. That's a huge part of overall well-being.
Yes.
Even if your basic needs are provided for and you have enough income to survive, there's that sense of fulfillment and purpose that it's just people need it.
Yes. And we do kind of value our veterans, right? You do always feel like, hey, you're doing something. But, once I start working for, company XYZ, nobody comes up to me and goes, hey, thank you for your service at company XYZ.
But you're still making a huge impact and
Right.
you're still serving your country,
Right.
just kind of in a different capacity.
Exactly. And you don't stand out. I used to go to Walmart in my uniform and people would go, oh, there she is. There's a military member.
Right.
You're dressed like everybody else. You do get lost in the sea of people.
I think folks have a hard time finding that mission again. And so that's one of the things we talk about in class the last day is you may not find the same kind of mission, but you need to find out what your mission is in your heart. And if you can't do that at work, or if the mission at work isn't all you need, then figure out what your heart tells you to do.
Right.
And follow a mission. You've got a couple of missions now.
Right.
But folks do get lost. They get underemployed. They end up in positions where they're just, punching the time clock, and then they get angry. And they're like, I was commanding troops,
Right.
12 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
Right.
it's hard to watch, and it's something I hope that we can turn around for folks over time. We all get better as a community at doing that.
Yeah. And do you have resources that you can connect people with who suffer from PTSD?
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like that would have a big impact on a job, and being able to like have an employer that is sensitive to that.
And I think folks are hesitant to raise their hand, but there are a lot of folks out there, even in the civilian world, that are suffering. And mental illness across the board, and trauma across the board, PTS across the board is troubling. And yes, absolutely. There are folks that can specifically be available for veterans. So we have so many partner agencies in the community that we can refer folks to, that we're very fortunate here in Charlotte to do so. But sometimes it's just knowing the hotline.
Right.
Get that number up on our website, get that number where people can find it easily, and call for one another if someone can't call for themselves.
Yeah.
Right.
That's good. Yeah, no, Charlotte has a lot of resources. It's just making people aware of them. Yes,
that's the thing, just making people aware. And like she said, it's great that most of the resources actually work really well together. It's not a competition.
Right.
Hey, if you go to this person, then you can't go to this person, People are giving you all the resources. Hey, have you talked to this person? Have you talked to that person? Maybe this would be a better organization. Maybe that would be a better organization. And that matters. That really does matter because it gives you more options.
Right.
Yeah. And Patriots Path is part of a larger organization called NC Serves. And NC Serves is run here in Charlotte by Veterans Bridge Home. But it's nice to be a part of that and to partner so closely with them. And that is, once veterans can go to NC Serves and say, hey, I just want to click here, sign up, and then they have all those resources at their fingertips, and they have someone at the center of that can point them in the right direction and say, I hear what you're saying about housing, but it sounds to me like you need a job first. Let me point you to two resources, one for housing and one for,
Yeah, well, it's a web. A lot of these things are really connected.
Right.
And kind of depend on each other. So everybody needs to be involved, and everybody wants the same thing for our community. So it's nice when you see people with similar interests working together.
Yeah, we're very fortunate in Charlotte, I believe, and the surrounding areas in North Carolina in general.
Yeah. Yeah, Charlotte has like 400 some nonprofits, something crazy like that.
Believe me, we wouldn't do it if we didn't have to.
Yeah, right.
I'd go back to for-profit world in a heartbeat if I could, right?
Yeah, no, someone's got to do it. It needs done.
Right.
So, that's cool that you're providing this service to people. And your experience probably helped a lot with that, right? With your recruiting. And you can kind of give that, like you had mentioned, you can give that perspective.
Right. Well, and I started a for-profit company from scratch back in, I won't even say how long ago it was. I won't date myself. But I ran that company for 15 years, and then I sold that company. And it was, so in the for-profit space, I was the HR person. I was the head of that organization. So I learned HR through the back door that way. And having been in staffing and then having done that, and then having been an instructor in higher ed, there were these layers that, you're right, at some point you get to look back on your career and say, oh my gosh, look at all the dots that got connected. And I thought I was in all these different, totally unrelated jobs.
Right.
But at the end of the day, I learned A and I learned B and I learned C. So gosh, here I sit and I've got this experience and I realize now what my passion is.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it did. The executive search world was fantastic, but I landed there and I was happy with it because of all the other things. And once I saw the picture and connected the dots, it was good.
No, it is neat how life experiences that you think are completely unconnected form this path to lead you to where you're supposed to be.
Exactly. The people you meet and the jobs you have and the places you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
Yeah. Hey, well, thank you guys for taking the time to do this.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.